Hello, hope everybody's doing well and staying safe. Today's story is about the late legendary federal judge James Zagel, born and raised in Chicago, attended Harvard Law School, graduated from the University of Chicago. I seen him in and around the Dirksen Federal Building, at the cafeteria, at the law library, and I seen him preside over the legendary Family Secrets trial and both Blagojevich trials. Now, Judge Zagel was highly respected by his peers, including several prosecutors and top defense attorneys. He was known as somewhat of a Renaissance man, an honest, a fair judge, also known as a hanging judge, meaning if you were found guilty, there's a good chance if you showed no remorse, he was going to send you to the maximum punishment. He presided over 1,000 trials in several high-profile cases. Chicago born and raised, James Zagel attended Harvard University, went on to graduate from University of Chicago, and had a passion for tennis. He loved playing tennis in college, and him and his wife would travel all over North America attending all the top tennis matches. Now, the judge also had a passion, a love for the arts and theater. He was a member of the Chicago Symphony, Chicago Art Institute, the Lyric Opera House. He said his second career path, if it wasn't for law, would have been acting. He had a couple small roles in movies filmed here in Chicago, one where he actually played a judge. But I'm sure, looking back, Judge Zagel really enjoyed his bench time at the Family Secrets trial because of all the drama and all those characters. Now, Judge James Zagel had many accomplishments, too many to name, but he actually sat on the U.S. Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. And back in 1985, President Ronald Reagan appointed him as a federal judge. We all know how Ronald Reagan felt about organized crime, how powerful they were, and we remember his war on drugs policy was a disaster. I wish we had more leaders like this to turn our great city and state around. Here's our old governor, Jim Thompson. He said that James Zagel was one of his favorite attorneys. He never got indicted and kept all the wise guys like Pat Marcy and Alderman Rhodey and the Dailies. He kept them in check. And he appointed James Zagel as the director of the Illinois State of Police. Now, here's probably one of the least favorite reporters in all of Chicago, Pam Zeckman. And I'll never forget the day I found out Judge Zagel was actually married to her. You'd think a handsome man like Judge Zagel, a man's man, could do much better than her. Obviously, he wised up. They got divorced. I'll never forget the time she tried to come in Richards with the cameras, and they shunned her ass out. Now, Judge James Zagel had a short stint as a U.S. prosecutor as well. And back in 1967, he was part of the prosecution team that prosecuted Richard Speck. As we all know, Speck was found guilty of murdering 8 nurses in Chicago and sentenced to death. That sentence was later reduced to 100 to 300 years. Now, in any business, in any sports, it starts at the top. And then you're only as good as your team, right? Well, Judge James Zagel had the best team of U.S. prosecutors in the country. I'll put these guys up against anybody. You got Mitch Mars, Marcus Funk, John Scully, Gary Shapiro, Pat Fitzgerald. The list goes on and on. Chicago outfit guys despised, hated these guys. Now, Judge Zagel presided over 1,000 trials, and one smaller trial that he sat on was of corrupt Alderman William Beavers. The feds indicted him for not paying taxes, racketeering, bribery. This guy was writing himself checks totaling over $200,000. During sentencing, Judge Zagel told him his greed and gambling destroyed his political career, but was lenient. Only gave him 6 months in prison and $20,000 fine. I'll never forget seeing Joey the Clown take the stand in his own defense. He had the entire courtroom laughing with his one-liners, his jokes, his charisma, especially when he said he threatened to strangle his ex-wife, but he never did. He even had Judge Zagel was laughing. But during sentencing, the judge came down hard on him, agreed that he was one of the men that participated in the Seafer hit, and told Joey, you have to pay for your sins. There's a rumor that Joey threatened the judge, but I don't think it was true. Now, Frankie DeBreeze decided he was going to testify and explain his side of the story, that his brother Nick was the real killer, and that his brother Nick and his son Junior conspired together to steal all his millions and lock him up for life. But the prosecution and Judge Zagel would not let Frankie go on and on and on. They kept cutting him off, interrupting him. Frank was losing his temper in the courtroom. The judge reprimanded him several times, even threatened to duct tape him. Now, one of the top defendants at the Family Secrets trial, an alleged boss of the Chicago outfit, was Jimmy Marcello. He was found guilty of luring, participating in the beatdown of the Spilotro brothers. The jury, though, found him not guilty of killing Nicholas DeAndrea, but Judge Zagel overruled that verdict and found Jimmy Marcello guilty of DeAndrea's killing. He also complimented Jimmy, saying that he was very well respected and the smartest guy out of all the defendants. Now, Judge James Zagel allowed the defense to have a couple character witnesses. Joey decided to have 3, and one of them was Grand Avenue legend Johnny Lira. And Johnny came across wonderful during the direct, but during cross-examination, he didn't hold up so well. He actually acted like he couldn't hear. He had to read the prosecutor's lips, and Judge Zagel warned him to knock off the shenanigans. Now, here's an old friend of mine going back to the 1990s, Nick Ferriola. He was one of the defendants at the Family Secrets trial, but he was smart. He listened to his lawyer, kept his mouth shut, and during sentencing, Judge Zagel said that he had to be very well trusted by Frank Calabrese and some of the higher-ups, proffering $160,000 a month. He gave Nicky 3 years in prison. He had to forfeit $9 million, pay a $60,000 fine, and take several AA classes. Now, during one of many sidebars, Judge Zagel even tried to warn Twan that it wouldn't be in his best interest to testify in his own defense, especially after seeing Joey and Frank not being able to hold up. But Twan didn't listen. He tried to outdo Mitch Mars. He lost. Judge Zagel told him, it's amazing how you could be a stellar cop one day and a criminal the next day. 12 years he gave him. Now here's Paulie Sharo, the Indian. He was a sleeper for the Chicago outfit out west, good friends with Lombardo and Tony Spilotro. He was also a defendant at the Family Secrets trial. At this time, he was like in his late 70s, very quiet, didn't talk much, pretty much slept all day in court. But according to Nick's testimony, he was the lookout man during the Imovaci hit out west. Judge Zagel told him he needed to be punished in prison for the cold-blooded murder he participated in and gave him 20 years. Now, there was a lot of characters at the Family Secrets trial, like this guy here, career criminal, professional burglar, thief, Chicago outfit associate, Bobby the Beak Siegel. I seen him testify. He said that he took a lie detector test to prove he had nothing to do with the break-in at Tony Accardo's house. And at one score he did with Frank Calabrese, he left right away. Frank said, "What's wrong?" He said, "I don't do dogs." The courtroom and the judge started laughing. Here's a late friend of mine, Rocky LaMantia, son of Shorty LaMantia, both 26th Street Crew outfit associates, born and raised in Bridgeport. I sat next to Rocky every day in court. He would elbow me, sometimes laugh out loud. Judge Zagel reprimanded him several times to keep his comments and his mouth shut. And 2 weeks later, he got caught trying to smuggle Frank Calabrese Sr. Italian salami. Judge Zagel barred Rocky from the courtroom. I'll never understand why Judge Zagel was so lenient with Nick Calabrese. He only gave him 12 years in jail with time served. He only did like 6 years for 14 murders that he participated in. And in one of those murders, he actually slit the guy's throat from ear to ear. Judge Zagel allowed Nick Calabrese and the prosecution an open mic at trial. I forget her name, But Judge Zagel had his personal court reporter, a beautiful young blonde lady. And at one point, Joey Lombardo was actually flirting with her. He had her laughing, telling her funny stories. And at some point, we were all waiting while these two were conversing. And the judge said, Mr. Lombardo, excuse me, whenever you're ready, court's ready to resume. Joey continued talking to the reporter, and the whole courtroom started laughing. The judge shocked everybody in court when he allowed Joe Lopez's request. They actually had an inmate from Southern Illinois prison transported all the way up to the Dirksen Federal Building in Chicago, in shackles, surrounded by marshals, to testify he heard a different number of gunshots when Ortiz and the Polak got killed in Cicero, disputing what Nick Calabrese said. When he walked past Joey Lombardo, he bowed to show respect. Joey was startled. Now, if there's one thing I learned going to over 25 major federal trials in Chicago, going back to the 1990s, is that the judge has complete control of the courtroom. He's got more control than God. Sometimes these federal judges have too much control. But Blago kept defying the judge. Judge Zagel kept warning Blago, almost pleading with him to keep his mouth shut. Blago wouldn't. Blago showed no remorse, so Judge Zagel gave him 14 years. I've seen Judge Zagel several times, not only during both Blago trials and during the 3-month family seekers trial and sentencing, but I used to see him a couple times at the cafeteria. I remember seeing him at the DePaul University bookstore. And one time I seen him at Manny's Deli, but I was always a little intimidated to go up to him and say hello, unlike some of the other attorneys.